when something happens and it's taken away from you, then the wisest thing we can do is accept that this actually is going to be better for us, that it's opening new doors for us.
It took me many years
Of
to
course.
really let go and realize that this is what it was. Have you ever had your heart broken? I have. And I'm sure you know, it hurts. Today we talk to an expert with a medical degree about heartbreak and heart healing. Spoiler alert, it might just be the best thing that's ever happened to you.
Love matters. Love matters. Love matters. Love matters with Evelyn Sharma.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Sharma, and this is Love Matters, a podcast about relationship topics that matter to you and me. Today's topic is heartbreak, something I think just about everybody can relate to. We've got a really great guest who's written a book on heartbreak, literally. Dr. Shyam Bhat is a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, integrative medicine specialist, and author of the best-selling book, How to Heal Your Broken Heart, a psychiatrist's guide to dealing with heartbreak. Dr. Bhat, I'm so glad to have you on the show today.
You're welcome, Evelyn. Thank you for having me on your show. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, me too. But before we get into heartbreak, let's talk a little bit about you first. You bring a lot of perspectives to your work. You were born in New Zealand. You've earned medical degrees in psychiatry and internal medicine in the US. And now you work in Bangalore. You combine all this with deep study of Eastern philosophy and healing practices. And you're a pioneer of holistic psychiatry in India. But not only that, you're also a best-selling author and a trustee at Deepika Padukone's Live, Love, Laugh Foundation. Wow. Tell us a little bit about what moved you to get into this line of work.
Yeah, it's funny you use the word move because that's exactly what got me into this line of work. In the sense that I moved a lot as a kid. I was born in New Zealand, and then when I was about a couple of years old, my family moved to Libya in North Africa. And I spent most of my early childhood there. I was about 13 when we moved to India, and then did my high school and medical college in India. And then I moved to the UK for psychiatry and then to the US for further my training, and then ended up practicing and living there for 10 years before I then came back to India. So
Wow.
this whole journey and starting early in life, I was always very curious about people, about what makes people who they are. I was fascinated by how culture and society and the places we grew up in shape our sense of who we are. We might as well have been very different if we were born in another place, another time, another society, another culture. So I was very curious about this, and that curiosity about people took me to psychiatry.
Hmm.
Once I started psychiatry, I was fascinated by the mind body connection. So I ended up training in internal medicine and psychiatry and practicing mind body medicine and holistic psychiatry. So those early childhood moves were what was what propelled me to becoming a psychiatrist.
Very interesting. Let's get down to the nitty gritty on broken hearts. Bollywood rom-coms pretty much rely on heartbreak, and we've all seen people get their hearts broken on screen. It's usually very traumatized in movies, though, and it often ends in total disaster. One of my all-time favorites, of course, is Dave Das. But would you say that that's a fair depiction of heartbreak?
For some people, it can be. Devdas is the stereotypical heartbroken person whose entire life has come crumbling down because they've been heartbroken. And it's not, I mean, you do see that, but then again, you see that same degree of hurt inside a person. In the sense I see it as a therapist. A person may feel it within them, but they may not show it, they may not express it. And I think we should understand that heartbreak can be experienced in so many different ways. But the key similarity in all of those is the loss of a relationship, the loss of love has provoked deep anguish. And I explain that in my book. That anguish ultimately is about how we are feeling about ourselves. That relationship that we have with ourselves has been shaken, and it probably wasn't great to begin with, but it's been shaken by the loss and shaken by heartbreak, and that causes a lot of pain and anguish. But a person may know about it or not know about it. A person might grin and smile act like there's nothing wrong, or they might numb their feelings. There are many ways that people try to cope with this pain. Not everybody goes the Devdas route, but most people are obviously hurt if they're going through heartbreak. That's what the name implies, that you've been hurt by the loss of a relationship.
Right. I once read that heartbreak or the rejection by a person that you love is harder psychologically to deal with than an actual loss of a person dying.
It's hard to quantify, and it depends on from person to person, but it could be one of the most significant losses that you would ever have to endure. And of course, therefore, for young people, it certainly is most likely the most common significant loss that young people endure and have to usually deal with on their own, because we expect early romance and early love to obviously not last forever. So nobody is surprised that the
Yeah.
relationship is over. And yet, that loss is felt as profoundly as any other significant relationship. And it's affecting a young person who still doesn't know themselves.
Right.
They're still trying to get an idea about, who am I? What am I loved for?
Yeah, because my first real heartbreak, shattering heartbreak, would have been probably around 16,
Right.
which for some would have been pretty late, I think. But yeah, no, my first heartbreak was pretty shattering.
And that was hard, right? I must have been.
Oh, it was so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, I didn't know who I was, but it did actually lead me to a lot of self discovery.
And the reason that it's so significant is because what you're chasing is that feeling of feeling completed by another person,
Mm,
that feeling of finally finding a place that you can be as vulnerable and trusting as you've always desired to be, and be completely and perfectly understood and taken care of. In other words, what you're chasing is a return to your mother's womb, you know.
oh, don't make me cry. It's very deep.
Well, I was also suggesting, Evelyn, that that is why it doesn't work out, because that is quite an expectation we have deep down.
Wow.
What do we want deep down? That's what we want. We're
Yeah,
all wounded little children
that's
who have
right.
never not been loved as much as we should have. God bless our parents, but that's what it means to be human. That you cannot give a child. Most children do not have not had as much nurturing, acceptance, unconditional love as they would have liked to have.
That's right. Well, I've chosen my husband a lot wiser because of all the therapy sessions I went through
Right. That's
earlier,
great.
finding out what moved little Evelyn to make poor choices with men.
Right.
And yeah, it's just little Evelyn, the 4-year-old left by her dad and
Oh,
looking for men that kind of represent that first love relationship that you once had and, that treat you
right.
the same way. And all that jibber jabber that my therapist told me.
Yeah, no, I think that stuff is, as you said, really helped you make good decisions, and because
Absolutely.
people need to understand that about love.
Yes, yes. And I think a lot of friends, don't want to hear you talk about why you keep getting into these bad relationships. So I think a therapist is the way to go for everyone to discover and maybe find, your true partner, your true love partner that will actually, maybe not complete you, but complement you. But anyway, we'll
Right.
talk about therapy later. I'm not going to hijack this chat as my personal session over here just because I have you on. Let's talk about your book. How did you come to write this book?
Back in 2011, 2012, I used to do a radio show in Bangalore. It was totally
Hmm.
live. People would call in, be anonymous, and just talk to me about whatever problems they were facing, and I would try to give them some ideas, some solutions, some pointers. And that show was a real eye opener for me, because every show, most of my questions were about heartbreak. In different flavors, people were asking me, how do I cope with this pain I'm feeling, this pain of loss? What do I do? And of course, they would be regular listeners of the show, so they would hear me answer this question. They would have
Again
heard me
and
answer the
again.
question the
Yeah.
night before, but there's
Mm,
a different flavor to it for everybody. And so it became clear to me that heartbreak is huge and that it hurts people significantly. And I was reminded of my about my own heartbreak experience when I was in my 20s. It
mm,
caused a lot of pain, confusion, and it took actually all the training I then had in psychiatry, and that learning, and even the therapy that we all go through as part of our psychiatry training. It took all of that for me to really not just figure out how to heal, but also really positively transform from that experience of heartbreak. And so
Mm,
I felt like if there's a 20 something year old person or 30 something, or frankly,
mm,
any age, frankly,
yeah,
someone who's going through heartbreak, they should have an easy to read, accessible book that helps them understand why they're hurting,
yeah.
what are the things that they can do to heal, and how they can actually use that experience to positively transform themselves, becoming more resilient, more compassionate, and more loving as a result of that pain.
That's fantastic. And that book has definitely been added to our family library.
All right.
Just because you're married doesn't mean your partner doesn't disappoint sometimes. Your heart gets a little bit broken. So I can use
That's
that
right.
book, but especially when it comes to my daughter, of course, she just turned 1. I hope the day she needs that book, it'll help her. So thank you for writing this. And you also dedicated the book.
Yeah, I dedicated the book to the women who broke my heart. You taught me what books can't teach about love and loss.
Hmm. So you're saying that my daughter will still have to go through the heartbreak to understand it?
Well, I think you are doing already some of the most important things we can do for our children in terms of preparing them for love and the loss of love. And that is developing
Mm.
secure attachments between parent and child is
Mm.
what gives us resilience in relationships and also helps us choose the right relationships and be attracted to the right partner.
Mm.
It's all to do with something that's called attachment theory, which I also talk about in my book.
So, heartbreak can be really serious. But before we go on, let's listen to a few statistics that our team has put together. And guys, please get in touch with us on lovematters@dw.com if you have any questions or if you'd like to share one of your stories about heartbreak and how you got over it. We'd love to hear from you. We are not Dr. Bhatt's Heartline radio show, but we sure hope that we will impact your life just a little bit with our episodes.
Love matters.
According to a recent study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, men may actually experience more intense heartache than women when a relationship fails. The UK researchers posited that men are in fact just as invested as women in finding, having, and working on relationships, but stereotypes about masculinity get in the way.
Wow. So we just heard that men actually seem to suffer more from heartbreak than women. Is that possible? How is heartbreak different for men and women?
Yeah, a lot of the research suggests that men hurt more than women after the end of an intimate relationship, either the end of a marriage or another relationship. So apparently, women suffer more pain, but then they heal faster, whereas men may not show that they're hurting, but they actually are hurting deep inside and they take a much longer time to recover. Some studies suggest that men actually never recover from a relationship. They just kind of semi heal and then move on to into another relationship without fully healing from the previous relationship. There are many possible reasons, some biological and some sociological, some to do with the way men's brains are hardwired and some to do with the way that they've been raised. Biologically, it's possible that men have been hardwired more to compete rather than to form connections. That also could be a result of socialization because the social expectation or norm for men in many countries is that men should not act vulnerable.
Right.
Classically, men don't cry. And so
Mm.
being a man means to just bottle everything in, and that the only permissible emotion for a man is actually anger. And
Mm.
which is why men, when they're hurt, they often don't cry, they get angry. And that's one of the biggest reasons when a man is hurting, they're actually pushing people away, and people start disliking and isolating this person more. When a woman, usually when she's hurting, may cry rather than hit out and get angry. And so that will get people, more supportive, make them more supportive, and they understand that she's hurting and she's suffering. The man who is shouting, who's screaming, who's being violent, who's drinking, who's doing all of those things is actually saying, I'm hurting, I'm scared, and I'm in pain, but they
Mm.
can't articulate that. They probably don't even know that sometimes or often. And so they do this, and that creates a vicious cycle of isolation and breakup, causing even more isolation generally. And then that spirals into a situation where the man feels like life is utterly hopeless, nobody cares about him, that nobody's understood him, and that leads often to can lead to violent anger as well. So
Hmm.
men, for hormonal reasons, whether it's testosterone, their
Hmm.
brain, neurological differences, as well as socialization differences and conditioning differences, they don't cope with heartbreak and breakups well. And so the data says that men actually end up dying much more after a breakup, after divorce, than women. So divorced men are more likely to die from various disorders. The all cause mortality, death from any disorder, is
Wow.
increased. And that's to do for with not just, I mean, one is because often their lifestyle deteriorates.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more smoking, drinking, bad exercise, bad food,
Hmm.
but also because loneliness and anger causes inflammation in the body. And that inflammation can cause
Hmm.
all kinds of disease.
Wow.
So, contrary to the popular opinion,
Hmm.
when it comes to heartbreaks, and despite most of the partner violence and all those issues, the man is the perpetrator. It's also true that when it comes to heartbreak, the male is the weaker species.
Wow. Well, we have a wonderful episode on redefining masculinity, actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah, if any of the men listening feel like, maybe it's time to talk, or maybe it's time to kind of find some men that would like to be a bit more vulnerable and honest, that's a really good episode to listen to as well. Well, it's a tough topic, heartbreak. Nobody wants to go through it, but we all throw ourselves into the next relationship because, in the end, what's life without love? But do you think it's better to get a dog instead?
Well, the dog will definitely love you unconditionally like no human being can or will. And if you stop looking for that in human beings, you'll probably have a better relationship. If not, yeah, you should get a dog. I mean, why not both, right?
Yeah. But yeah, it's not easy to have a dog. So please be very responsible if you get one. Is there anything good about getting your heart broken?
Well, as Nietzsche said, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. I said that
Hmm.
once, and somebody told me that's a Kelly Clarkson song. I had to remind them that was
That's true. That was
written
my
by
anthem.
Nietzsche hundreds of years ago. Anyway,
Mhm.
whoever you attribute those words to, just remember that yes, it's hard, it's painful, but it is ultimately going to be good for you, because it's through pain like that you start developing an awareness of yourself, an understanding of yourself, healing parts of yourself that you didn't know were wounded, and then helping you become more compassionate and actually having better relationships.
Yeah.
As Rumi once famously said, keep getting your heart broken until it's open.
Oh, my goodness. That's really touching. That just touched me deeply. But yeah, that's true. I think just looking back at my 20s especially, I think if I hadn't had all these heartbreaks, especially one significant heartbreak that I had when I was 21, I was still in Germany and, living my everyday life. And I was working in a law firm. And this relationship was everything. It just like such a thrill. But when he broke up with me, because he became more and more successful, and I think he needed to go a different way, God bless him, it broke me so hard that I wanted to change my life.
Hmm.
And that's when I got a call from a friend that I was discovered back then
Wow.
on MySpace
Wow. Yeah.
as a model. And I was offered a contract to travel the world. And I would have never taken that.
Right.
But because I was so heartbroken, I was also so courageous to make a
That's
big
right.
change and live my best life. And look at that. Where am I now? Well, married in Australia with my little daughter.
That's
It's
amazing.
awesome, but I wouldn't wish for anything else. and it had to take that heartbreak.
That's beautiful. That's I think you're an embodiment of an example of the fact that when something happens and it's taken away from you, then the wisest thing we can do is accept that this actually is going to be better for us, that it's opening new doors for us.
It took me many years
Of
to
course.
really let go and realize that this is what it was. But yeah, I did the right thing. And I also had a very interesting chat with Karima and Agastya in our Gen Z episode, who said that nowadays the focus of dating is on personal development, which is very interesting to see what the next generation is doing, saying that they would like to date, but it's okay if they break up because they call it a situationship, which kind of worked for this situation, but may not work for another situation. But as long as you will always see the best of what this relationship has made you. So, how can heartbreak really help us become a better version of ourselves?
Absolutely. The first thing is to ask yourself, what would it take for you to find a sense of security, peace, and self acceptance without this relationship? The pain that you're feeling after heartbreak is ultimately about you not being able to completely accept yourself and love yourself. That's why it feels so bad. Once you realize that and you start working on that, then that relationship would have taught you the ability to be at peace with yourself, to be genuinely happy within yourself. Of course, that doesn't mean you won't want a relationship. It's natural, human, and will add so much love to your life to be connected, of course, to another person. But you don't then approach any relationship with the energy and emotion of a thirsty person dying of, just for a drink of water and feeling totally empty. You approach it with a person who has got a lot to give, who doesn't come to it out of need, but who comes out of it with love, who is here to give, not to take. And you therefore then attract someone else like that, who has healed from their wounds, who is also there to accept, to give, to connect, not to work through old childhood wounds that they're not aware of. And that's what this breakup will help you do. It is a catalyst in your journey of transformation. And you will not be the same again. Don't expect to be the person you were before the relationship. You are going to be different, but in a better way. You're going to be more compassionate, more loving, more self accepting, and accepting of others.
Beautiful. Very good. That should give us some direction.
I hope so.
I stopped looking for men in a certain way when I heard this line. One of my mentors said it: become the person you're looking for is looking for.
That's right.
So if you're looking for a great person now that you're single again and your heart has been broken, but you've healed, become the kind of person that you're looking for is looking for. So if you're looking for a fantastic person, a whole person, someone who's standing on their own and knows who they are, that's the kind of person you want, a successful person, a person that can, look after you, of course, but knows how to look after themselves. What kind of person do you think they are looking for? Definitely a whole person too. Learning from heartbreaks. Wow, such a huge lesson today and such a valuable episode for Love Matters. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhat.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for having me on your show, and it was wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you. Deeply grateful for all that you've shared today. If you have any questions in matters of love, please write to us at lovematters@dw.com. We'd love to hear from you, and your suggestions for topics might be featured in one of our upcoming episodes. You've been listening to Love Matters from Indian Express and DW, Germany's international broadcaster. I'm Evelyn Sharma, and I think love matters.
Love matters. Love